So previously, I made a video to show you how to create an authorization server and a resource server. If you haven't watched it, please go check it out. The link is in the description. As you remember, for the client apps to access the resource server, they need to provide their client information and user information for the authorization server to retrieve the access token. But what about other services in the same system? What if they want to access the resource server too? Today, I'm going to show you how to secure the communication between servers. But first, I'm having the resource server running on the port 8082. And this resource server has, as you remember, has two endpoints. The first endpoint is public, which anyone can access it. So if I send a request to this endpoint, it will return a string, hi there. The other endpoint, which is private, if I send a request to this endpoint without authorization header, it will return an error. So the client service will not need users' information, but only its client ID and secret. So I'm going to go to my authorization server code and create one. And with client, we're going to call this client service. The secret is encode secret. And the authorized grant types are client credentials. The scopes are all. And now I'm going to run this on the port 8081. So now we have the authorization server up. We also have the resource server up. Let's go to start.spring.l to bootstrap our client service. I'm going to call this client service. The dependencies that we're going to need are OAuth2, and that's it. Okay, generate the project. Terminal, go to the downloads folder and unzip the file. And as usual, I want to move this client service to my projects folder. And open it in IntelliJ. The first thing you want to do is to replace the property file with the YAML file. But, whoops, not this one. But this is just my preference, so feel free to use the property file if you like. So application.yml. In this file, I want to define that I want this server to run on the port 8083 because the authorization server is running on 8081. The resource server is running on 8082. So this service is running on 8083. So this is the most important part of this video where we specify where to get the access token and also this client service information. So security, OAuth2, client, grant type, as you remember, is client credentials. The client ID is client service. The client secret is secret, just like what we defined in the authorization server. The access token URI, this is where this service will go and get the access token. So I'm going to say http://localhost 8081 OAuth token. And this is the endpoint provided by the authorization server to retrieve the access token. Okay, now this client service will use REST template to call the resource server's private endpoint. And in order for it to have the access token code in the header, we'll need to configure it in the configuration class. So I'm going to go to the application class. And here we'll define a bean for the client credentials resource details. And I'll explain why. So public client credentials, resource detail. I'm going to call this OAuth details. It returns new client credentials resource details. And I want to have the configuration properties from security.oauth2.client. Now, what does this thing do? What it does is that it goes to this application.yml under security.oauth2.client, and it will grab all the properties to construct this object for it. And this object is necessary for the REST template to have the authorization header in this request. So now we're going to define the bean for the REST template. Public REST template, return OAuth2 REST template, and we're going to use the above bean. Okay. Whoops, supposed to be new here. Okay. Now let's test this. So I want to implement the interface command line runner to have the run method. The endpoint that we're gonna get the data from is the private endpoint of the resource server. So HTTP localhost 8082/private. We will get a string back. So I will have a result string here. And we're gonna go REST template, get for object. We're gonna provide the URL, and also the data type, string class. Let's try if that works. Okay. If it works, it will go to this endpoint and get the string from this endpoint, which is welcome to the dark side, if you remember. Now I'm gonna run this application. Okay, welcome to the dark side. So as you can see, this REST template have sent a request with the authorization header to the private endpoint and get the result. So thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next videos.